Making an introduction, the act of introducing people, is an art. There's a reason why most speakers or performers don't just hop on stage or go directly to the mic. Setting up a presentation, a show, or a product launch is a big deal and a big responsibility. My husband, Joe, tells of an introduction that went wrong when someone introduced him as a gym bunny. Now, it's true, Joe does like going to the gym, and Joe is cute, like a bunny. But Joe wasn't pleased with this label and the baggage that came with it. It made it sound like all Joe did, or that his only interest, was the gym. There's a whole lot more to Joe than that. One of the illustrative titles people gave Jesus was King. It was a designation provoking an intense response. And while it may be right, Jesus was the leader of a religious movement among Jewish people, and he didn't directly deny it, King wasn't a title he seemed wholly contented to use. Instead, in his ministry, Jesus tended to talk more about being a servant, rather than being untouchable or exalted like a king. Jesus was vulnerable, humble. In parables, he spoke of the kingdom of God. His kingdom, he tells Pilate, is not from this world. The title king just wasn't adequate on its own. I've seen a similar kind of uneasiness from people for whom traditional categories or expectations don't work either. Those whose gender identity doesn't fall into established types. Some people share having internal experiences not related to their chromosomes or external physical characteristics. The terms male and female don't accurately or systematically describe how they experience life. Now, some people understand this instinctively, but many others find this idea challenging to wrap their heads around. Ambiguity or fluctuation, especially when it comes to gender, isn't a comfortable place for everyone. Some want or need things to be one thing or the other, like this or like that. There are no gradations or complications. Boys should look like boys, and girls should look like girls. Gender norms become apparent in the language we use to describe ourselves and others. Many struggle to adapt vocabulary to notions that aren't definite. Indeed, a lot of traditional terminology about gender is constraining and prescriptive. It doesn't accommodate what some feel is, in fact, not so simple, not so black and white. The words he and she, or even a sense of fixed or consistent identity, aren't accurate signifiers for everyone. Things change from one day to the next or from one situation to the next, and that's not a good fit for narrow, concrete categories. And some people find the mere constructs of gender into any type unsuitable. Identities are complicated, and the words we use to label people don't always accommodate that complexity. As human beings, we are not simply one thing or another. That's true in many aspects of our lives, and it was true for Jesus too. Calling Jesus a king works on many levels, but it fails to describe who he is on others. Jesus is a king, but he is also a servant. Jesus has power, but also empties himself. Jesus is rich, but he's also poor. Jesus is a warrior, but he is also a peacemaker. Most terms fail to define who Jesus is exhaustively. No one, including Jesus, has a one-dimensional personality. And if we think they do, we probably don't know that person or really want to. If we're going to love someone, we must discover who they are, which takes time. It means asking questions and listening to the answers. And it means adapting to and respecting all aspects of who someone is and that person's nature, even when it's ambiguous and complex. The Feast of Christ the King is a time to celebrate the unconventional, and Jesus' kingship certainly was that. Nothing about Jesus is plain. If we cannot engage with that, there's no way we're going to engage with God. We must unstick our language. We must be willing to vary our expressions, to hold lightly to limiting concepts. No boundary or label will deliver all the information there is to know, because God is limitless and without boundaries. Let us not fear that which is not delineated clearly, but honor it, recognizing there may be multiple aspects of being, and in fact, in being a child of God.